Right, yeah, so I was going to do a little conversation about general, just basic law, right, about these guys. Because I think it's important, actually, that people start to understand. So, now I'm UK based, so I'm going to talk about UK law, right? I'm in Scotland. So I'm going to talk about UK law. So, with these guys, what you've got is you've got pet industry birds and wild birds, right? There's two defined distinct groups, okay? So the pet industry birds come under slightly different rules than the wild birds that you might have in captivity. Now, let's go with the wild birds to start with. So, to keep wild birds in captivity, first of all, you need to have them, there needs to be a reason why, and a valid reason why. It is illegal to keep a wild, healthy bird in captivity just because you want to. That is against the law. So all birds in the UK are protected by the 1981 Wildlife Act and the 2006 Welfare Act. So when you rescue a wild bird, so let's take Jeremy for example, who is a healthy wild bird. So Jeremy, when we rescued him, needed genuine help. He would have died without us. So we brought him here and he was brought up in the way that we do, and he's now fully feral. There is no reason to keep that bird at all. And the only mistake we could have made is conditioning the bird to humanize him, basically, and so he's centered around humans. Now, that would have also been an illegal act if we had done that and made that mistake, but we're experienced enough not to make that mistake. So, in cases where they are conditioned by humans, where they're perfectly healthy birds, but they've been brought up alongside humans and they can't function as a normal bird out in the wild because they are reliant on humans, that is actually a prosecutable offence for the humans that cause that. Whether that is a rescue, whether that is just a person trying to help. Now, I do believe that it is important that people are aware of this when they take birds in, because we are allowed to help birds. But there is a very strict thing about this. So, when you get a wild bird in and it needs help, you're meant to take it to the vet. And the vet will give you a little kind of sign-off for, I think it's 7 days, the first period, and then they'll want to see the bird again. And then I think you get 14 days, and then if it's not releasable after that point in time, you're given a bit longer, but only if you're going down the right route, okay? And they will basically sign the bird off all the way through until it's released, and then off it goes. Now, if the bird is not well enough to go back into the wild, let's say it's got an injury like Gilbert or Morgan or something like that, what you get is them signed off permanently. And it's really, really important to get them signed off permanently, because if you get investigated, for example, those birds aren't protected because you can't prove where they came from. You can't prove why they're here because they've not been sanctioned by anyone, which is a problem because it puts all of your birds at risk. So that falls to the person who's looking after the birds, and normally I'm referring to rescues in this context. If they haven't got every single bird signed off correctly, technically, it puts the whole lot of them at risk, because you could be prosecuted and therefore banned from having birds. And what happens to the birds that aren't officially legal? It doesn't end well for them, believe me. So there are, you have to, there is a whole set of procedures that are in place. Now, I'm going to say this, I'm just going to be really frank about this in the UK. We are, all these entities that look after this are pushed for time, money and resources and staff and all the rest of it. So these laws aren't necessarily enforced. But it doesn't change the fact that there is a responsibility for us as individuals to enforce them on ourselves, to make sure that we are doing this right. The reason the laws are there is to protect the birds, to give them the highest grade welfare, and to make sure that we are doing the right thing as human beings. And it is up to us to follow those laws. When they're not followed, yes, RSPCA and things like this can be involved, in SPCA in Scotland and trading standards and the police welfare units and other things like this can be involved. But it's a very difficult, task, and it is, and no one wants that. We really don't want to go down that road, because what we want is we want high welfare. We want these birds cared for really, really well. So if you've done all your due diligence beforehand, you should be fine, as long as you're keeping them in very, very good welfare conditions. Now, I'm going to go on to the pet birds. So I'll just say, there is an issue with the wild birds. In the UK at the moment, there is an issue with people taking these in and not necessarily keeping them in high welfare conditions, or doing all of what I've just said, those procedures to keep those birds safe. And it's really, really important to do those procedures. It also helps, it helps if you go through those procedures with other authorities, not having to investigate, not having to waste more time, and all the rest of it. So it's really, really helpful if we self-police ourselves and follow the law. So pet birds, this is where it gets dark. So the pet birds don't come under the same protection as far as wild birds, as far as the 1981 Wildlife Act goes, because pet birds are bred to be pets, right? So I'm going to talk about ravens in the pet industry, because really that's the only birds I've dealt with in the pet industry, and that's my subject. So ravens are bred in the UK, both legally and illegally, and purchased by anyone. You don't need a license, you don't need anything at all. And this is not me saying go and do it, because if you go and do it and I find out about it, I will be, I am going to contact you. It's just as simple as that, because I am trying to be the voice of these guys who don't have a voice. I'm trying to be the voice of reason. I'm trying to get people to understand, if you're going to do this, do it properly, or don't do it at all. So part of the problem with the pet trade birds is people aren't applying the 2006 Welfare Act to them, which is a vital key point, because that is all about their health, welfare and well-being as captive bred birds, and it's meant and designed to keep them safe and also in tip-top health. Just gonna have to go. That was Jeremy raiding biscuits. So yeah, it's designed to keep them in a healthy environment, tip-top condition, and all the rest of it. Now, what I'm finding is a lot of people go out and buy ravens, for example, and then just don't apply any part of the 2006 Welfare Act and think that's fine, and it isn't. It just isn't fine at all, because the 2006 Welfare Act, by its own definition, gives you a set of parameters that you can keep these birds in that accounts for all of their needs. So if you ignore the 2006 Welfare Act, it means that there's fundamentally a problem with your care. That's how it is. There isn't an argument to be had in that. And I'm going to be quite frank, I am not one to listen to people's excuses. It's right there written on a piece of paper. It's written in law, it's written on the government websites. It's go and talk to a vet, they'll say the same thing. Go and talk to any authority will say the same thing to you. I'm just repeating what they would say to you. All right. So there are 5 points in the 2006 Welfare Act, which applies to wild birds, but also applies to it's the thing that applies to the captive bred birds. And the 5 points, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but the 5 points are really, really vital. And it's partly about allowing the birds to exhibit natural behaviours, but they also have to have enough room to be able to fly. If you're not going to free fly them, they certainly have to have a very, very large space to live in, but they have to have a space that is considered adequate for their species. They have to be able to show, as I said, natural behaviours, foraging and interaction with other birds, and all of this. But they also, you have to make sure that you are doing everything you can to make sure that their health, well-being is right there, right at the top of its game. Now, what I'm finding across the UK, and I'm just going to call it out as I see it, what I'm finding across the UK is multiple different people who are not applying the 2006 Welfare Act to their care of these incredible 5-foot wingspan birds, and are keeping them in atrocious conditions, and openly saying it. I mean, absolutely openly just going, yeah, this is how we're doing it, we don't care. Because the law hasn't caught up with us, we don't care at all. And we'll just keep advertising this as what we do. And what is incredibly disturbing now is I'm beginning to discover is that there are some so-called reputable groups who are doing this, who are not applying the 2006 Welfare Act, which, if you can't apply that, then you're firstly, not an expert, but also you are not welfare driven and you really shouldn't be in this industry. And I'm really determined to get this stopped, because these people are giving an example, and a bad example, to other people about how you care for these birds. And that is not how you care for these birds at all. So by saying, we know what we're doing, and then quite frankly, you show people a bird locked in a room, or not going for a flight, or actually a genuinely ill bird, and say, we're fine, you are undoing everything that I'm trying to do and multiple other people are trying to do. I'm not the only one who's trying to do the right thing here by any means. But unfortunately, I'm the only one who is prepared to put my head above the parapet, right, and talk about this openly. Because everyone else is quite scared, because the people that we are sort of not targeting but trying to get them to wake up are generally, by their nature, not very pleasant people at all. And they go on the attack, they go on the defense, because they don't want to change anything, because they don't, it's too difficult, it's too hard, it's too expensive, we should have thought about that before we took the Raven on. So my whole idea going forward is to shout about this, to get people to wake up, to get people to apply the law that is there, both for wild birds, but also domestic birds, and get them to understand. The law is there for a reason. And if it's not necessarily governed or enacted upon by the authorities because they're too busy, and when they end up taking people to court, it can get thrown out, and it's a big waste of money for them. Doesn't it rely on us as individuals to then go and try and help them by trying to help the people, trying to advise the people, trying to get the people to change their methods and their thinking and their philosophy to fall in line with the law? Simple as. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I think that's really, really important. So going into next year, when people will be rescuing birds in the UK, just please, 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 if you've watched any of my videos, just please go with the law. All right? It won't do any harm at all. You're not going to get yelled at. You're going to get yourself in more trouble by not applying the law than you are just by applying the law. If you find a bird, take it to the vet. Ask the vet's advice. As long as you've asked the vet's advice, the bird is on record. And then you can proceed down a path that is suitable for the bird. Whether it's something that you can offer it care going forward and you think you can, that's fantastic. But also apply the law in what you do going forward. And if you make sure you dot the I's and cross the T's, it's grand, right? There's no problem at all. If you don't do that, then you put everyone at risk, including yourselves, for prosecution. And that's really sad. And also the aggression of people who will come to you and say, this is wrong. This is just wrong. And those people, while they might express it in the wrong way, they are actually fundamentally right. And I can see the passion in some people, and some people do get it wrong. They go on a bit of an attack. There are kinder, more gentle ways of doing it, but ultimately you do want the end result, and the end result is to get this sorted. And if you're going to go and buy a raven, first of all, I advise you just don't. But if you are going to go and buy a raven, please consider what you're doing. The bird has to fly. There's no argument in this. The bird has to fly, right? It's part of their whole physiology, right? Without flight, they become ill and die. There is no point in buying, for example, a pet raven and it living till 6 years old. The whole point is, because that's your failing, the whole point is it's meant to survive until its maximum age that particular bird is going to get to, whether that's 25, 35 or 45. That's important. So please, 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 I'm begging you all, just think long and hard about what you do. Make sure that you do everything that is ethically right and morally right. And if you found yourself right now in a position where you can't manage, then please reach out and contact people, because people will help. It may end up with you giving the bird up freely, but that is in the interest of the bird, right? Because you cannot put your interests before the animal that you're caring for. that puts you immediately in an ethical quagmire. It really, really does. And I just think that's a really important thing to understand. So I'll just briefly touch on other laws. So in the US and Canada, the laws are very, very different. Very, very heavy laws. You need to be licensed to handle any indigenous bird. And that's kind of, I can't go into any more detail because I'm not any clearer on the law over there. This is just what I know because I advise people in the States and I advise people in Canada sometimes. And I've had to look at the law and understand where they are, where they're sitting inside the law or not. Now, I'm just also going to make sure that people understand this. And that's also, by the way, the same sort of in Northern Europe and places, very, very strict rules. Licensing that don't like birds in captivity. They don't want to see wild birds in captivity. And actually, most of the authorities in the UK would also agree with that they don't want to see birds in captivity that don't need to be there. That's, you know, it is just a something. Now, I'm also going to say, I'm an approachable guy. I am an approachable guy. And I will always try and help anyone who comes to me who is struggling with welfare, but I can only do so much because it relies on the person I'm dealing with to interact with me and kind of put in place what I suggest and work down that road of training and the methodology, whatever the word is, and the method that I sort of introduce to them, and then adapt it to how you can use it, but do use that information. Now, I am going to make this really, really clear. So be careful when be careful and have a thought process if you're going to come to me and ask me, for advice. If after I try and help you, it doesn't go anywhere at all, and I see that you're doing exactly the same or your welfare or care has deteriorated, then I will act. There is no bird, and I will make this very clear, there is no bird that I come across that I will walk away from if I see welfare issues. I will not walk away. Ever. Until it is solved. That is it. That's bottom line. It doesn't matter how much trouble I get into. It doesn't matter how much stuff people throw at me. Believe me, people can be very nasty. It doesn't bother me at all. Fundamentally, I'm not in it for the human. I'm in it for pure welfare reasons, for the animal, and that's it. Working alongside people I'm very happy to do, but if those people are not responsive and don't upgrade their care, then I have to act, and I will. So anyway, that's it really.